Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Fortum. I'm a Babson MBA graduate of 2019, and I did a Master's of Science in Finance in 2020 still at Babson College. So today I'm just going to share with you guys a PowerPoint pitch deck I put together to share with you guys a perfect way to come up with your pitch for your business. This can be used for pitching in front of investors. It can be used for competitions, and it can be used to pitch people to join your startup. I came up with this based on my personal experience starting companies, pitching companies at Babson College, working with over 25 startups internationally, and also learning a lot about how to really attract people to really understand what you're trying to build, attract the right co-founders, the right investors, and also to build a company that is based on the true purpose or the vision that you want for the world through your company. And these rules definitely are not the ultimate or the holy grail how to pitch. It's just based on my own personal experience. And I hopeful that whatever I share here is something that you guys can apply in any way that is convenient, and hopefully, more importantly, is helpful to you. So the first thing that I would just like to mention is that you always have to tell a really inspiring story. I think this is the key point of making a pitch. The story has to be based on something that maybe it's personal to you or something that you have seen firsthand, and you're able to make it very crisp, very succinct, and clear. And the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And your pitch in some way is a story. And if you can find a story that, from the very beginning addresses, which I'll go in the previous slides, addresses a problem, the potential solution based on your personal skill sets, experiences, or career, and any with how you envision the world through the company you're trying to build, that would be very, very good. So always think about your pitch as a story. Make it very relatable, make it hopefully very personal, so just someone can actually be able to empathize or sympathize with that story that you're sharing. So, the second phase, and I think this, it depends on who is pitching and how people go about pitching. But the second thing is, I personally suggest you should always share your team, who your team is, the team members on this journey you're starting, or you're in the middle of it, or you're towards the end, whatever part of the journey that you are in. In that pitch, always make sell your team as a second point. Some people put it at the end, but I actually think you should put it at the beginning, because your team is the force that actually breaks or makes whatever that pitch you're trying to make. And if you always give people the brains behind the idea or the startup that you're trying to build, I think it creates that story that you're trying to tell. Like, who are the people around this idea that can actually move the story along, translate the story from maybe a pain point to actually a positive outcome, a positive result, and trying to bring to life the people who are working behind the scenes early on, I think can actually foil what the story is about and what you're trying to build in the process. The second phase, which is somewhat traditional, is to list out the problem. What I'm suggesting here is to list that in an ecosystem approach. Some people think about problems to be something very specific, which I agree, and you should probably include that in the following slide to this slide. It's advisable to actually give like a bigger picture, a macro level view, or like a very from a far view of what the problem is, including the problem in that ecosystem, so that people can be able to see how big or small the problem is, hopefully how big the problem is, right? And use a lot of visuals, use a lot of graphs, numbers, to actually help list out how significant that problem is, right? And the next thing now is to address that problem. When I say importance, I'm not saying the problem has to be important, but the importance of how the problem has to be addressed, especially within a certain time frame, not just within a year, but a couple of years, so that people can see that economic or social cost if that problem is not addressed. On the other hand, in a very savvy way and in a very intuitive way, you can actually give the profit side of it. So once you listen at the problem, people can start thinking about, if I address this problem, or if they give you the opportunity to address this problem, there's economic profit out of it or social profit out of it, which is in contrast with what's occurring right now. So this is a very highly skilled approach, and you probably have to practice this a lot to get to that point. But I think this is a very interesting way to actually kind of really make that story much more um, um, relatable, but also very attractive in the sense where people say or people feel, what's important, people feel this is something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. The next phase is you have to now list out this solution. Sometimes I think the challenge that people face is that they have a general solution or sometimes two unique solutions. But what I'm trying to say is that try to present with some competitive edge, because if you always have competition out there, there are very, very few companies that have no competition like SpaceX, Blue Origin. Those are very, like, you need a lot of capital, you need a lot of government approvals to get something like that, right? So those are very large scale startups, but for the most part, you have a competition. So within that frame of competition, you have to think about how you will present in a very economically savvy way, as well as a socially improved way compared to your competitors, or a more socially conscious approach. Hopefully that is better, or you inspire your competitors to think differently about the problem. So this is something too that you don't want to say you're too unique, because to be honest, it's very, very few companies get to that point. But once you show how your competitive edge stands out against your competition. This one actually shows within the frame of listing out that economic and social profit, which is, yes, within your solution, you want to make sure that there is some feasibility when it comes to economic and social profit, right? So you go beyond not just talking about, this solution will solve the problem X, Y, and Z, but you have to relate it to something that people can put numbers to it. So there has to be some evidence of, this retention of customers. There is some system within your solution that will ensure that it's this sustainability with time. I apologize for that in this economic, right? But you want to actually do that very clearly so that people can be able to understand and relate to it. And this one is really important. One thing that is very interesting, people always pitch to investors, but you also have to include, even if you're pitching for investors, you also have to include the benefit for other stakeholders within that ecosystem of the problem, right? So trying to think about how will the government benefit with this? How will social workers benefit from this? Provided you have just a pure profit startup idea, right? Think about how other stakeholders within your stakeholder ecosystem will benefit from the solution. So that you're thinking from a very, it's like a solution can seep into a huge spread of other stakeholders, and there is some leverage you can get from there, rather than having the solution where, from the standpoint of as an entrepreneur, you're just thinking of an investor, right? But in the real world, you have to interact with all these other bodies, all these other stakeholders, government officials, environmentalists, all these other different stakeholders that once you actually do your research and have a very good understanding of that, it's much more appealing, and the story seems more reasonable and more realistic once you include that into your pitch. So it's very important you include that. Then at the end of the day, you try to end up with a very inspiring story of how the solution will address the ecosystem problem. So as I said in the one of the previous slides, I think 2 or 3 slides, or those previous slides, one of the things that I was trying to make a case was, even though your solution will address a specific problem at some, at the very early stages, you always want to show that that solution will address a larger problem, right, in a very systemic way, right? So it's not just an isolated problem, because in the real world, problems are not isolated, right? They're always connected to one thing, and one thing's connected to another thing. So always thinking about how is that solution will have a stage-by-stage approach, so that when one of that specific problem is trying to solve at point X in time, when that solution, that problem has been solved, another problem can be the next step. And in the long run, you have this ecosystem change. And just kind of explain what an ecosystem is. When I talk about ecosystem, I talk about, the interrelationship between different industries, right? You can be solving a problem in healthcare, but it affects education. People have to be aware of whatever treatment you're trying to suggest, or whatever product you're bringing into the healthcare space. There has to be some education to it, right? And with education, it comes how there's like a psychology there, there's a social construct there. So you also have to talk about families, how do families interact. So there's that psychology there, there's sociology there. So it's not just a one system thing. So once your solution of the problem has this ability to dissect different industries and different departments, that presenting that in that frame, right? I'm making a story about how this problem not just affect healthcare. For example, if you're pitching a healthcare startup, but it also affect the way we educate people, it also affect the way we help families. That, in a sense, makes it much more inspiring, and also makes it much more attractive for people to be part of it, right? So this is beyond the economic profit and the cost that you might show in graphs numbers, but this, in a sense, appeals to people's emotions, and that can go a really long way. Then, close to the end, this timeline is very important. It shows that you have some context of how long this will take, how long the problem takes to be tackled. Most instances, people don't get to hit all these milestones, but it just gives a sense of, you have an idea of what is coming. You have an idea of what you need to do at different stages. Hopefully, there is a feedback loop, or that you actually, self-check yourself and your team members to know that you understand that things will not always be exactly as it is, but there is some agenda that is framed out for, hopefully every 6 months or every 3 months, for you to actually know that there's a process in place for you guys to meet certain expectations. And this will help investors as well as other stakeholders know that you have a mission, right? And you have a goal to meet. And I think that's very important. Then the last phase is just that, you have to end with some hope and connect back to the purpose of your story. And I think it's very critical for people to know that there is a purpose to what you're doing. And this solution is not independent of the problem. It actually is connected to, the problem very succinctly. So this is just a first video of me sharing what I think is a good way to pitch. I will follow it up with an example of a pitch that I did with one of a company that I founded. So to just give some context to it. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video was helpful. This deck will be on Google Drive, and you can comment on it. No, sorry, you can just view it, but you'll be out there for the public to see. So thank you for your time, and thanks for being here. So this is it.